warm welcome to the teaching for the parish evangelization cells. And the theme I have chosen is: how should Christianity respond to contemporary culture? What should be our response to our culture? And I based this teaching on Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 8 to 9. And I quote, "Whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovable, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything praiseworthy, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you." Paul in this text presents eloquently two lists of imperatives, exhortations or invitations to the Christians in Philippi. The first list, though original, is not specifically Christian. It actually asks them to accept the best of their Greek Roman culture, as long as it has moral excellence, virtuous, and is worthy of praise. The second list urges them to imitate him by accomplishing what they have learned from him through his teaching and have seen exemplified by his own life. By doing so, they put into practice the first list of 6 qualities: true, honorable, just, pure, lovable, and commendable, that they should adopt from their culture. Through his personal encounter with the risen Lord, Paul's genius had uniquely embraced 2 world views, namely the Jewish and Greek Roman cultures. Paul never thought of himself as an ex-Jew or a convert from Judaism. So much so, his letter to the Romans, chapters 9 to 11, makes it abundantly clear that he still thought of himself as a Jew to his fingertips. So, what is this conversion we usually use? What had made all the difference was his meeting with the risen Christ and his consequent belief that God had raised Jesus from the dead, and his deep calling, his deep vocation to preach God's revelation in Jesus Christ to the entire world beyond the boundaries of Judaism. Christ's death and resurrection, therefore, markedly changed Paul's Jewish theology, which in turn radically applied to the Greek-Roman world with which he was so familiar as a diaspora Jew. As we all know, Paul was not born and bred in Israel, but was born and bred in Tarsus, modern-day Turkey. So he was a Greek-speaking Jew. Thus, the Philippians are now earnestly asked in the language of that world, of that Greek Roman world, not so much to simply think about, meditate on, ponder, as to take into account. The Greek used the word logizo, which means select, choose the good. They have long known from their own non-Christian heritage, as long as it is conformable to Christ. That is to say, as long as it is commensurate with what they have learned and seen in Paul about Christ. Paul seems to encourage the Philippians that even though they are currently citizens of heaven, living out the life of the future as they await its fulfillment, they do not completely abandon the world in which they used to and still do live. As believers in Christ, they should also embrace what is morally excellent, what is virtuous and worthy of praise of that world, as long as it is understood in the light of the cross, accurately expounded in Paul's teaching and distinctively modeled in his own life. What he strongly encourages them to do is the things they have learned and received from him by verbal instruction and what they have heard about him from others, from his colleagues, from his fellow workers, and seen in him by way of example. Paul's teaching and life were of a piece. He could propose himself as well as his teaching to their imitation. Now, how can we apply this text to our contemporary culture, to our contemporary world? We are living in a post-modern, media-saturated world where truth is relative, which means what is true for you might not be true for me. And also, it cannot be known. However, Paul's representative list of 6 qualities, virtues, assumes that absolute moral standards do exist, that people other than Jews and Christians have affirmed them, and that they justifiably merit our consideration and affirmation. We are therefore reminded, like the Philippians, who were being persecuted by the society, their contemporary world, the society around them, that although Western culture seems inimical, antagonistic to Christianity, it is still part of God's world and contains much good that we can applaud, learn, and adopt. Like the Christians in Philippi, we could be tempted to respond to our culture not by critical mind, but by total rejection. Paul, however, urges a better attitude by looking for whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovable, and commendable in our culture, in the light of the gospel, namely, whatever is virtuous and worthy of praise within the wider unbelieving world should be measured against the touchstone, the standard of the gospel. I firmly believe that if we dismissed his approach, we could perhaps end up rejecting the sheer trimmings of the culture, the icing sugar, while its anti-gospel stock in trade such as relativism, materialism, hedonism, individualism, nationalism are embraced by us through cultural integration. Paul's view, his strategy, has two fascinating insights that could be unfolded in group discussion. You can unpack these two insights, as they undeniably enlighten our behavioral response to Western culture, to our culture. The first insight, it accentuates the importance of the mind. However, the mind of the Christian must be a sanctified one, ready to put into practice, into effect, the gospel it knows through what has been learned and received. Only a mind informed by Christ's teaching is fully equipped, has got the tools to discern, which means to figure out, to work out, to ascertain, to discover where the world exemplifies what is good and where it has perverted the good in various ways. So that's the first insight. The second insight, according to Paul's view, is it suggests, and I've heard it many times this, that for the Christian, the distinction between secular and sacred is apparently indefensible. Why? Being in Christ sanctifies whatever one does. Consequently, whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovable, and commendable is also embraced by life in Christ. God bless.